This is the Positive EQ Perspective, where you'll find a more positive outlook on life by developing your emotional intelligence. My name is Kirsty Gwynn. I'm a coaching psychologist and speaker, and I'm passionate about helping people to experience more calm, contentment, and joy every day. Today marks a milestone on the Positive EQ Perspective because I am welcoming our first guest, Kendra Blake. Kendra is a wellness occupational therapist, a movement instructor, and the founder of Blake Wellness. She helps individuals to learn how to build balanced, compassionate relationships towards their bodies and sense of self through things like emotional regulation, balanced movement, routine, and time management. I really, really loved this discussion. We covered so many important things, in particular, the value of having compassion for ourselves, making movement intuitive and joyful, and what it means to come home to ourselves and our bodies. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. So, hi, Kendra. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kirsty. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, I've been so looking forward to having you on the podcast and being able to hear more about what you do and share that with everybody as well. So let's dive right in there. And if you want to go ahead and tell us, what exactly is it that you do?
Oh, that's always a very complicated question. But I think ultimately what I try and do is work in a preventative manner with people around their wellness. So my kind of aim is this idea of looking holistically at people's lifestyles, the way that they move their body, how they manage their routine, their emotions, and their stress, and help equip people with really quite practical skills so that they can cope with, I suppose, daily stresses and the things that come with being human. And a big part of that is how can you really come home to yourself? So, what is it like to start building a sense of self awareness and holding yourself really gently in your own journey and making it very much your journey, not someone else's?
Yeah. So this idea of coming home to yourself is something that I've seen you post about a lot, and I know you're very passionate about. So I wonder if you can share a bit more about what you mean by that.
So I think coming home to oneself is really about this idea of being able to drop down. So I think our society is very much driven and very achievement orientated. So it means that a lot of what we do is doing. So coming home to ourselves is being able to slow down, take a moment to check in and see what's coming up in your body. So what emotions are kind of bubbling under the surface there? What do you need to take note of and work with and respond to? And I think coming home to the body is also this idea of being able to be within yourself with a level of self acceptance. So, this is who I am. This is what's coming up for me now. What can I do to support myself within my journey? And I think a big part of that is how are you moving your body? How are you taking care of your body? How are you responding to its needs, both emotionally and physiologically?
Yeah. I think there's often this big idea, or at least I always used to think that the mind and the body were so separate. And I think the more and more that I learn and the more self awareness I build, just realizing that they're so connected, right? And that really often when we are unsure about how we feel, it might be that we're really disconnected from our body awareness and knowing how we feel within our bodies. So, if someone was maybe not coming home to themselves, right, not making that time to slow down and check in, what's the other side of that? Like, what would the cost of that be, do you think?
Goodness, I think our world is so used to not coming home to our body that it feels normal. And the idea of creating space and slowing down and coming home to oneself feels very foreign. So I don't think many people are able to recognize it or bring awareness to it.
Mm.
But I would say that some of the kind of key features of not being able to build a sense of self awareness and respond to your needs is a constant feeling of being quite exhausted, burnt out, stressed, and overwhelmed. I think the idea of needing to do or keep busy so that you don't have to feel is often a consequence of not being able to come home to ourselves. And I think a lot of the people that I work with have multiple ways that they cope with all the stuff that's around them, whether it be around how you're moving in terms of exercise, so compulsively needing to exercise, could be your relationship around food, it could also be your relationship around how you spend or don't spend money. So many things can be considered these coping skills that kind of jump in and really take you away from going, all right, hold on a second. This is what's coming up for me, and this is what I need to do to take care of myself right now.
Yeah. So it sounds like quite a I'm just hearing you talk about how that relationship with exercise and food and things like that can actually obviously go into an unhealthy side. So it sounds like quite a delicate balance, right? If we're trying to get ourselves to manage our well-being, how do we? Maybe a big question, but how do we maintain that line? And just obviously want to kind of tie this to the fact that for anyone listening, so Kendra has a degree in occupational therapy, specializing in mental health and lots of experience working with eating disorders, and is also a movement instructor in many different ways, which you can tell us about in a bit. But yeah, so just in the context of that, how do we know where that line is? How do we maintain that good balance between, like, when does it become unhealthy versus healthy and something that serves us?
I think that's a really good question. And I know that a lot of my clients really struggle to distinguish this. I suppose my kind of go to response with that is the moment it becomes a preoccupation, the only thing you can focus on, that you start losing other aspects of your life, then it's something that is, I suppose, getting taken too far. So if I'm thinking a little bit about compulsive exercise, the moment you see yourself choosing to walk in the pouring rain as opposed to taking the bus because you just need to keep busy,
Yeah.
that says to me that there's something that we might need to look at. And granted, I know that sometimes walking in the rain can be quite cathartic. I can relate to that. But if you start noticing that you start skipping things like social engagements because you are so focused on something like exercise or how you're managing your food, and you start noticing that other areas of your life feel a little bit more neglected, then I would say there's something about what you're doing that is more coping strategy than something that's really fulfilling in terms of your life. And coping is important in building resilience, but it's really how do we cope?
Yeah. One distinction that I often like to make is just this difference between self-care and coping as well, and just that we want to be
Yeah.
nurturing ourselves not only when we are struggling, but more generally too. Um, so that kind of brings me to this idea of how I see you talk a lot, and I know you're passionate about this idea of having more intuitive relationship with movement. And there was such a lovely kind of review that I saw that you had posted on your page, and it was just a client talking about how after working with you, very inspiring, that she, I think it's a woman, right, had
Yes.
found that they were just saying, like, being able to take the time to stretch outside and be in their garden, drink the glass of water I never drink because suddenly I feel how it helps and makes me feel better, and that actually I want to drink the water instead of, oh, I must do it. And so just reading that, I was just reflecting on how how important it is to be able to move from that space of I should or I must. And those are narratives that often, we have around health habits. Right? I hear them
Mhm.
so often with my clients too. And when I'm teaching, I should do this more, I need to do this more, I must do this more. Um, and that can often go right against motivation, right? When we're trying to motivate ourselves, it in fact holds us back. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about how we can move from that space of I should or I must or I need to making those health habits and that movement and eating to nourish ourselves, making that more something we want to do.
Mhm. I think that's a really wonderful, beautiful question. And it's also such a complicated one. I often think a little bit about how important structure is in building a habit, and
Mm.
how once you have a habit, it becomes more intuitive. And I think that's always the hard part. I think the hardest part is getting started.
Mhm.
So putting aside the time that is specific to a self-care activity like mindful movement, for example, even journaling. And that is really hard to generally create that space and time.
Yeah.
But what I have found in working with people over the years is once you create space, that space allows things to happen and things start to kind of fall into place. So, in other words, it becomes a kind of, I almost want to say, a snowball effect. You start noticing this idea that this actually feels really good. And that intrinsic reward is so much more rewarding than the external reward that comes from kind of giving yourself something after doing something that's supposedly good for you. So this idea that you build it internally and say, wow, that actually, I suddenly feel like I can breathe again, or I've noticed something that I didn't notice before. And you start going, well, this feels really important. And more spaces tend to start cropping up in your life where you can have space to do the things that are really kind of enlightening in terms of our sense of self-care. I do also hold, though, very gently that creating that initial structure can be really hard. So I think there's something about not doing it alone. So having a support system or support bubble around you that can really champion the spaces that you are needing to focus on. And I suppose in turn, how do you reward yourself for doing the things that are good for you? And a lot of people really struggle to recognize when what they're doing is kind and compassionate towards themselves, because it's always, or tends to be, very easy to do it for other people as opposed to ourselves. And I think that's really important to hold quite gently.
So when you're talking about how do we reward ourselves, what do you mean by that? Like what would an example of a reward be?
I think this can be quite an important thing to go quite tentatively with, especially if I'm holding in mind that lots of people struggle to give themselves compassion or a tap on the back and say, well done, you actually did really well. I think it usually comes with acknowledging the reason why you did or created the space. So, for example, let's say that you notice that you're feeling quite burnt out and run down. And there's a kind of inkling awareness that maybe slowing down. And instead of rushing to the next chore within the day, you need to create a space to do some journaling just to check in. I think the idea would be to notice and say, I recognize that I'm really struggling and that I am in need of a space to slow down. So bringing awareness to the struggle and very, very gently holding in mind that you're possibly not the only person struggling with this. This is human to struggle and it's okay to struggle. And this is an important space for me. So I think the way we talk to ourselves, the self-talk is really important. But then likewise, maybe it's about sharing what you've done for yourself with someone who really compassionately holds you. And that can be really helpful. And I kind of speak about the flows of compassion. When we struggle to give ourselves compassion, sometimes it's easier to receive compassion from someone else. You might have a good friend who goes, that's absolutely awesome. I'm so proud of you for making that space to write, for example.
Great. Yeah. So finding that person is so important, finding that support system. Yeah. Great. Really, really wonderful. Just lovely ideas. And I'm thinking about how so often when it comes to, let's say we're not taking any time or any space for ourselves, which is a place I think so many people are at, right? Or we're not exercising at all, or we feel like we feel like we have a long way to go, basically, in whatever habit that we want to start. I think we can have a tendency to negate whatever first steps we take, and we compare against, like, I'm not allowed a pat on the back until I'm doing the required exercising 3 times a week or something like that, and really those small steps count, right? And I think rewarding ourselves for that and getting that acknowledgement will motivate us to keep it up. So we so often try and motivate ourselves with self-criticism, but it just isn't effective, I don't think. So I know, so you had said here that you work with individuals who are looking to improve their overall sense of well-being by learning how to create space in their lives to connect with their sense of self and hold compassionately their individual experience. So why do you think that compassion is so important?
That is such an important question. And I think for me, I feel that compassion is the root of how you take note of what's going on for yourself. Compassion is this idea that we are human in a world that tends to want to make us otherwise. We want to be those people that excel all the time, that are 100% perfect, that can really achieve status in what we're doing. And I think compassion takes us back a little bit and goes, is that what's important? What are you holding gently in your life, and what do you need to hold more gently, potentially? And I think that as a root, compassion is the space that allows us to build the awareness, because we then can go, oh, hold on a second. I am human. It's okay to need to rest as opposed to work a 24/7 job. And it's okay to want to connect with people and feel both happiness and sadness and all the kind of emotions that come with a human experience. And I think that is why I love compassion so much. It allows us to be human and to integrate that reality.
I'm just going to catch on one thing that you said there, which I thought was an idea I haven't heard before. That really compassion allows us to build awareness, and that makes a lot of sense. That we really can't. I think I always think of awareness as taking courage. Just having the courage to actually look at ourselves. It can be quite painful sometimes to think, "Oh, that's not working for me," and we do have to do that in a compassionate way in order to change, right? If we then just berate ourselves about it, we're probably not going to look again, right? We're not going to have that compassion, or that we're not going to be able to build that awareness again because it's too painful. And yeah, so I hear you saying that not practicing compassion is almost an obstacle to building that awareness.
Yeah,
Would that be
definitely.
correct?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you bring in, Kirsty. I think when I talk about compassion, often one of the first ways that I bring it up in sessions with clients is to ask them what they identify as compassion ultimately, and who they would relate to in terms of compassion. And many people bring kind of key societal figures to the forefront, people like Desmond Tutu, maybe even the nurses, firefighters, and they might bring one or two kind of family or friends close by that they can really hold and acknowledge as compassionate. But those people that they bring, they are able to say compassion isn't always just the soft, mushy stuff. It often requires a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to show up. I know personally, for one, I'm quite squeamish around blood. So I definitely think that the nursing staff, for example, are exceptionally courageous in what they're doing in holding the fragility of a person. And I think if we can recognize that we can have both courageous compassion, but also kind compassion, the kind of yin and yang of compassion is maybe how I'd like to put it. We can then definitely work with this idea that it's not always bubble bath, but sometimes compassion is actually putting a boundary in and saying, no, this is too much for me.
Yeah, and I know that sometimes in terms of my own self-compassion practice, a lot of it is being gentle with myself and kind of saying kind things I would say to a friend or tending to myself in the way that you're sharing. But other times, what has been really effective is drawing a firm but kind boundary with myself, where I would just say I wouldn't talk to anyone else like that. I'm not going to talk to myself like that, and not doing this in a pushy way or a mean way at all, but just being firm with myself, or saying, I'm not going to skip that meditation practice. It makes me feel good. It's important to me. I need to prioritize it, or I want to prioritize it, shall I say? And yeah, I hear you saying it's not all bubble baths, and I think we can still a lot of people still hold that idea of, oh, self care is always has to be this um, thing that maybe feels softer, but it's really whatever energizes us, makes us feel good, nourishes us, and perhaps, as you say, being courageous about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely holding what you said about creating that meditation practice. It's a gentle reminder for myself to step into that today.
Yeah, I've kind of I've gone back to it recently. I noticed that my sleep is deteriorating. I know meditation is always something that helps, and yeah, it's just makes such a difference, right, to how my whole day goes. Even if you know I can get myself, sometimes I do 10 minutes, but if I can only get myself to do 5 minutes one day, even that can make a big difference. So anyone who hasn't tried it, highly recommend it. Right, finding an instructor that feels right for you too. Yeah. So let's hear more about your work as a movement instructor. So you recently qualified as a BASI Pilates instructor, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Rebounding, and you do general group fitness. I have taken some of your Pilates classes, and they were really, really brilliant. So for anyone who's interested in trying Pilates, Kendra, well, you can tell us what you have available, and I highly recommend them. But tell us a bit more about your work on that side of things.
Thank you, Kirsty. Well, I think movement for me has been such a pivotal part of my life. It's kind of evolved as I've grown up. So I started doing a lot of ballet when I was younger, and it's still something I'm really passionate about. But I think as I started studying, I started realizing how important movement is in our ability to function daily. And I'm speaking both in terms of your ability to squat down into a cupboard and dig around within all the Tupperwares that you might own and pull out what you need and then still be able to stand up, to the kind of idea of being able to walk or move to a destination that you need to get to. But likewise, movement is so pivotal in how we manage our emotions, how we feel, and cope with our stress. And I think as an occupational therapist, that really drew me to functional movement and restorative movement. So, movement that really nurtures and takes care of our body in a way that helps us do things daily that we want to do. And I think that's why I gravitated towards rebounding and Pilates. Rebounding is lots of fun.
Clarify that.
It is, exercise on a mini trampoline. And I think all of us need a little bit more fun in our lives. So it's a really good way to kind of inject that, especially when we take ourselves and life too seriously. But it's also a fantastic full body, low impact workout that helps support things like lymphatic drainage, blood circulation, and oxygenation. So kind of aspects of our physiology, which helps boost your energy, maintains a kind of stable mood, helps support your immune system, but likewise really builds a space where your body can feel stronger and more adept in things like balance, coordination, muscular strength, etc. And obviously the cardiovascular element that comes with it. So I think that's really a big part of why I love rebounding. And then Pilates is something that I've just always loved. I think something that I've held as an association to Pilates is the grace that comes with it. And I'm talking about grace with anybody, because what I notice with people that move when they do Pilates, regardless of your shape and size, is that you really inhabit your body. It's a space where you have to come home, because Pilates uses this mind-body connection. You've got to focus on specific muscles, the way your body is moving, how you're holding your body stable. And I think that is so powerful. And I know personally what I've noticed, Joseph Pilates, he says that after one session, you'll feel a moderate difference. But after 30 sessions, your whole body will change and your life will evolve. And I think while studying that was very, very evident for me, is that just how much I feel able to do things which I could do before, but now I feel I can do to a much greater degree. And that includes going for a run with my husband, and I'm not the strongest runner. So I think it's fantastic, and it really supports what I really want to champion, is the ability to do life.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I know, fun fact for anyone who doesn't know this about me, you probably won't, but I worked in Malaysia. It was a dream of mine. I love the flying trapeze, and I worked as a flying trapeze artist for about 9 months to a year in Malaysia at Club Med Resorts. And I have that's been the period of my life where I've been doing the most exercises. Obviously, every day we were training a lot, and it was also a period of building a lot of perseverance for me, because it was one of the most difficult things I've done. It was very joyful for me, kind of tying back to that play, and I just really enjoyed it, and the grace of it, and having to come home and feeling really present. But the strength that I built up in my body over those months was just incredible. I noticed, just that I was walking taller, right? I just felt more comfortable in my body. Things were easier. Normal life stuff, just like carrying the shopping was easier, right? And you just feel better generally, right? So much stronger, sleeping better, mood is better, everything. I mean, I think we can get that mood benefit from a little bit of exercise too, but you certainly, when you build that core strength, it makes a big difference.
Definitely. And I think that's exactly it. Movement doesn't have to be done for an extended period of time. And movement doesn't have to be a specific movement practice necessarily. Going for a walk between your kind of daily tasks that you need to do constitutes as movement. Getting out of bed even is movement. And I think we downplay the fact that we are moving our bodies almost continuously. So when we create a movement practice that involves something like Pilates or rebounding or trapeze artist work, it's this idea that you're adding something to your life. And I think that is so important, to not seeing movement as a chore and not seeing it as something that you have to do, because it's already part of your life. So we're just supporting it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really I love that shift of not seeing it as a chore, but seeing it as something that is adding. Um, and I just love I think the words we use are so important, and I think the word exercise for a lot of people can have a negative connotation because it's often prescribed as a kind of I should, right? And whereas this term movement is a lot broader, I think it encompasses our whole human experience. And it's more joyful. I remember working with a client who said no, she hated exercise and didn't like to move. But then we discovered that she actually loved to dance, and she would often put on her favorite music, not in any professional way. She would just put on her favorite music at home and can dance around the room. And that was movement, right? She was doing exercise. She just perhaps didn't identify with that word. And so I think making that shift is maybe an important part of making it more joyful and more personal to us.
Completely agree. Yeah.
So you had shared that so you said you were always passionate about Pilates, and that your love of dance had kind of maybe led you or fueled this passion too. Something I was going to ask you at the beginning, now I'm going to ask you anyway. What inspired you to go into this line of work, to the occupational therapy side as well?
I think for me, routine has always been something that I've tried to navigate. And I think growing up, there was a big part of me that was very much determined to be organized, diligent, professional, all the kind of things that I thought I needed to be. So again, I think it's the shoulds must mindset.
Yeah.
And what I started to realize was that in trying to conform to what I thought I needed to do, I was potentially missing out on doing life. And I kind of navigated towards occupational therapy through a wonderful friend, and who introduced it to me and said, this is what you are kind of born to do. And I had no idea what it was at the time.
Yeah.
And when I started studying, I started realizing that the idea of being able to function and be present in our world is something that really resonates with me, and I'm exceptionally passionate about it. So I suppose whilst helping other people do it, I've been learning how to help myself. And it's the same with the movement. And I think that's why I love doing it. Not only am I helping other people, but I'm learning from other people in the same way. So it's very much a kind of relationship space. And I think I love that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of working with people because I want to, because they want to work with me.
Yeah. Lovely. Awesome. So if there's any place that you recommend someone, I was going to say should begin, where would you recommend that someone might begin if they feel at the moment that they don't have that compassionate relationship with themselves and with their body? They're not coming home to their body. They're not really, they haven't been able to find that space, and they're thinking, hey, it sounds like this could really help me. And where should they begin?
I think the word curiosity comes to mind for me. I think the moment we start being curious about ourselves and our world and what we're doing and how we're choosing to engage with it, we can build that awareness, which then helps us make changes that might feel really supportive for us. And it is just about gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. Oh, I notice that I'm constantly busy and I just can't slow down. I wonder what that might be about.
Yeah.
Or I notice that there's a part of me that's really resistant to going for that walk with the dog.
Yeah.
I wonder why that's there, what's going on for me. And the more you start gently probing, the layers will come off, and you can then start working with those layers. And I think that is probably where I'd encourage people to start. Just be curious.
Sounds like a lovely first step, and manageable, right? To just start with that attitude of curiosity and see where it leads.
Yeah.
So Kendra, I know that you have recently launched an online Pilates platform, right? yeah, so I want to tell us a bit about that and how else anyone can get in touch with you if they want to work with you or to find out more.
So it's very new to me. Technology is something that I'm still navigating, but it's been a wonderful adventure and kind of learning a new skill set, I suppose. But where you can find me is possibly easiest via my Instagram handle, which is blakewellness.ig, Instagram. Or you can go to my website. So that's www.blake-wellness.com. And I think there you can scroll through, you can come join me for some live sessions or the on-demand platform, which is very easy to kind of sign up for. There's a 7-day free trial and there's weekly classes added just in terms of both rebounding as well as Pilates. And it's something that I'm hoping is going to grow and develop. So if you are willing to be compassionate with me and join me as I grow and develop as both an instructor and as an individual to support you on your journey, it would be so wonderful to have you join. And I think it's just about creating a space for yourself. So what I love about the on-demand platform is that if the times for the lives don't suit you, you can create a space that suits you at any other point. And the sessions I have run from between 10 minutes all the way to an hour. So you can really be quite flexible around what works for you in terms of your routine and the time you have available.
Yeah, and it's amazing to have that choice. I mean, that 10-minute time, I find that can even make such a difference, right? If you don't have all the time just to take those 10 minutes. And then, of course, there's something really lovely about taking a whole hour. And like you say, the on-demand that you can fit it in to your schedule as it works. But having the live sessions is also lovely to have someone guiding and leading you. So it's great that you offer both of those. Great. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think if I just hold gently at the idea of movement and compassion, I think what I'd maybe like to kind of say as a final thought is that movement is very much unique to who you are as an individual. And I know many people absolutely cannot do Pilates just because it's not something that they want to gravitate towards. So I think very much in line with what you were sharing, Kirsty, around your client who just puts on music and dances, find a space that really feels nourishing for you. And it might be going for a gentle walk, it might be doing Tai Chi, it might be doing Pilates. There's so much out there. So give yourself the benefit of the doubt and experiment, try things, have a little bit of fun. Movement doesn't have to be that HIIT workout done at the gym that makes you sweaty, ultimately.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Kendra. This is really, really interesting. And I'm sure so many people are going to feel inspired and gain so much from everything you said today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kirsty. It was so lovely talking about what I'm passionate about.
Well, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Every subscriber counts, and it helps this information to reach more people. Thank you, and I'll see you next week on the Positive EQ Perspective. If you're looking to calm negative thoughts, accept yourself, and live joyfully, then you need my free roadmap to overcome negative thinking. You'll discover 7 steps to follow, as well as 3 mistakes most people make trying to improve their mindset and life that only make things worse. Visit positiveeq.com/free. That's positiveeq.com/free.